What if I told you that the primary reason you are just, utterly exhausted at the end of the day has absolutely nothing to do with how many hours you worked, or like how early your alarm went off, or whether you made it to the gym?
Right, the physical stuff. We always blame the physical stuff.
Exactly. We blame the physical stuff. But what if that kind of bone-deep exhaustion is actually the result of the sheer cognitive load of, I don't know, the hundreds of tiny invisible lies you told today, just to keep everyone around you comfortable?
It is a profound drain on the central nervous system. I mean, we really rarely think about the biological cost of managing other people's emotional states
Yeah, the biological cost.
because the energy required to constantly monitor a room, to suppress your genuine reaction and then manufacture a completely different, more palatable response. That is staggering. You are essentially running two operating systems in your brain simultaneously.
Two operating systems. That is such a good way to put it. You are running the what I actually think system in the background, right?
Yeah.
And then the what I need to say to survive this interaction system in the foreground.
Exactly.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a really hard look at the architecture of authenticity. You shared this massive stack of material with us that tackles this profound everyday struggle, which is why being true to yourself feels fundamentally more dangerous than just, pleasing others.
And this material, it's just incredibly rich because it doesn't just offer that standard, bumper sticker advice of just be yourself.
Right, live, laugh, love, all that surface level stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It actually digs into the mechanistic reality of why we abandon ourselves. It bridges these deep philosophical reflections on identity with granular neurobiological breakdowns of people-pleasing behavior. It forces us to examine the exact tension between our need for social cohesion and our need for individual integrity.
Which is a huge tension. And the ultimate promise embedded in these sources, it's stark, but it's liberating. The argument is that while authenticity will absolutely cost you social approval in the short term, which, let's be honest, is terrifying.
Oh, completely terrifying.
Yeah. But that transaction is the only viable path to lasting peace, confidence, and just cognitive freedom. Pleasing others is framed here not as a kindness, but as this insidious trap.
A very comfortable trap, though, initially.
Right. So, to understand how to dismantle that trap, we need to examine the bait. Let's look at that initial temptation to conform.
Well, to understand the bait, we really have to look at our evolutionary hardware. The desire to be accepted and loved, it isn't just some poetic longing, right? It is a primal survival
A
mechanism.
survival mechanism, like literally life or death.
Literally.
Okay.
Because for hundreds of thousands of years of human history, isolation from the tribe meant actual death. You could not survive the savannah alone. So our brains evolved this highly sensitive threat detection system that is focused entirely on social status.
Okay, I always picture it like a submarine running its sonar. Like you walk into a meeting room or maybe a tense family dinner, and before you even pull your chair out, your brain is sending out these invisible pings.
The social sonar. I love that analogy.
Right, it's like, ping, is the boss stressed out today? Ping, did that joke I just made land with my coworker? Or did they wince? Ping, am I safe here?
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it, really.
Hmm.
Your social sonar is constantly pinging the environment for any sign of rejection. And when you get a positive return, when you get the smile, the nod, that quick approval.
The green light.
Yeah, the green light. Your brain rewards you with a huge hit of dopamine. You feel this fleeting, warm sensation of safety. You are accepted by the tribe. You get to survive another day.
But the sources characterize this as quick approval, right? Which kind of implies it's highly volatile. It reminds me of the metabolic cycle of a sugar rush.
Oh, it's very much like a sugar rush.
Like, you eat the candy, your blood sugar spikes, and for about 20 minutes you feel totally invincible. But there's zero nutritional density there. None.
Absolutely zero.
So the crash is just inevitable, and it leaves you way more depleted than before you took the hit. So you are constantly hunting for that next piece of candy just to maintain basic baseline functionality.
Because underneath that frantic hunt for the sugar rush, is a really profound fear. The engine driving that constant need for quick approval is the terror of emotional starvation.
Emotional starvation, wow.
If we look at the neuroimaging studies referenced in the broader literature of behavioral psychology here, they show something fascinating. When a person experiences social rejection, a specific part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex lights up.
Okay, the anterior cingulate cortex, what does that do?
Well, that is the exact same region of the brain that processes physical pain.
Wait, really? The exact same region?
The exact same one.
So, okay, social rejection isn't just this abstract emotional concept. The brain literally registers someone, like frowning at your opinion, the same way it registers a physical injury, like a broken arm or something.
Precisely. To your central nervous system, disappointing someone or being criticized is processed as a literal physical threat.
That is wild.
It is.
Yeah.
And that is why the external pressures to conform are so incredibly effective. The sources outline how these pressures come from every single vector of our lives, the family unit, friend groups, workplace hierarchies, and just broad societal norms. We are essentially navigating a minefield of potential pain every single day.
And we are doing it in an environment that our evolutionary hardware was completely unprepared for. Like if the brain is built to manage the social dynamics of a tribe of roughly, 150 people?
Dunbar's number, yeah,
Right.
around 150.
Right. So what happens when we introduce modern social media? The sources touch on the amplifying effect of these platforms. But looking at the mechanics of it, hasn't this natural survival-based desire for tribal love been systematically weaponized against us by algorithmic design? I mean, with social media literally quantifying approval via likes.
Oh, it absolutely has been weaponized, mostly through that exact quantification you mentioned. In the ancestral environment, approval was qualitative. You knew you were safe because you were physically sharing a meal around a fire with people.
You could see their faces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Today, approval is digitized, it's quantified, and it's infinite. You carry your tribal status in your pocket. So that tension between our deep-seated need for community and our paralyzing fear of rejection, it's now being actively exploited for engagement metrics.
So the submarine sonar never gets to shut off, ever.
Ever.
The pings are now literally push notifications on your phone. Like ping, someone liked your photo, ping, someone ignored your message, ping, someone left a weird comment.
And that creates a highly addictive closed-loop system. You perform a certain version of yourself online, or even in the office, you get the digital or literal smile, and you feel that dopamine hit of safety.
The sugar hit.
The sugar hit. But because the reward is so transient, so fast, you have to immediately perform again. You are just so preoccupied with managing these incoming threat vectors and collecting those tiny bursts of approval that you become completely blind to the long-term biological and psychological cost.
Which brings us perfectly to what the material defines as the hidden tax of agreement. And it is a tax that is collected in very quiet, subtle ways, I think. We all know the basics of people-pleasing, right? Like, we know what it means to bite our tongue.
Right, the everyday politeness.
Yeah. But the data here suggests something much darker than just being overly agreeable. It starts with saying yes when your nervous system is literally screaming no.
Yes. It is the systemic suppression of your internal reality. That's the tax. It is staying silent when someone crosses a line that hurts you, simply to avoid introducing friction into the room.
Just to keep the peace.
Just to keep the peace. It is the active, deliberate ignoring of your own emotional needs, your physical exhaustion, and your core values.
The text specifically highlights this phenomenon of hiding the, quote, inconvenient parts of yourself. And I really want to unpack that word inconvenient because it strikes me as the real crux of the issue here. Like, what does an inconvenient identity actually look like in practice?
Well, an inconvenient identity is simply an authentic one.
Oh, very
Because human beings are inherently complex and messy, right?
Yeah.
We have strong, sometimes polarizing opinions. We have distinct boundaries. We have days where our capacity for empathy is just at absolute zero.
Totally. The tank is empty.
And all of those things, all of those very human traits are highly inconvenient to a manager who just wants a project finished, or a partner who just wants an easy evening, or a friend group that expects you to always be the cheerful, accommodating one who plans the trips.
So when your genuine internal state threatens to disrupt the smooth operation of someone else's life, that is when it becomes inconvenient.
Precisely. And out of that fear, that anterior cingulate cortex lighting up with pain, we sand down our own edges.
We make ourselves smooth, predictable.
Frictionless. We become frictionless.
But okay, let me push back on the sources for a moment, just on behalf of anyone listening who is thinking about their daily reality right now. Where exactly is the line between healthy compromise and toxic self-abandonment?
It's a great question.
Because, like, isn't a little bit of people-pleasing just called being polite? If I think my coworker's presentation is a bit dull, and I choose not to say anything because it's just not a big deal, I'm not abandoning my identity, right? I'm just exercising basic social tact.
And that is a vital distinction to make. The sources aren't advocating for radical, unfiltered bluntness in every passing moment of your life.
Right, because that would make you a nightmare to be around.
Exactly. Social tact is a necessary lubricant for society. The danger lies in the escalation and the frequency. Hiding an opinion about a slide deck to keep a Tuesday morning meeting moving is tact. But if you systematically hide your opinions about the direction of your career or the behavior of your spouse or how you spend your own free time, that is when you have crossed into self-abandonment.
Okay, I see. It is the difference between a localized compromise and a systemic suppression of self.
Exactly. It's cognitive dissonance on a macro scale.
Yeah.
And the physiological tax of that dissonance is what the text identifies as pure, unadulterated exhaustion.
Right, going back to why we're so tired all the time.
Yes. It is what psychologists call allostatic load, which is the wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. When you are constantly performing, constantly suppressing your true reactions to fit an expected mold, your body is essentially bathed in low-level stress hormones all day,
Cortisol just flooding the system.
constantly. So the exhaustion isn't just psychological, it is somatic. It is in your muscles, it's in your gut.
And the ultimate tragedy outlined here, and this part of the reading really got to me, is that terrifying realization of waking up one day and realizing you no longer recognize the person in the mirror.
The loss of self.
Yeah, you have played the character of, the person everyone can rely on or the frictionless employee for so long that the original architecture of your personality has actually collapsed.
It's atrophied because you don't use it.
Right. You achieved the evolutionary goal, right? Everyone likes you. You are completely safe from rejection. But the deep, dark irony is they don't actually like you.
No, they don't.
They like the character you constructed for them.
Which means the safety you feel is entirely an illusion. Because if the acceptance is predicated on a performance, you know deep down that if you ever drop the mask, the acceptance vanishes.
Oh, wow. That is chilling.
It is. So you're trapped in the role. You become entirely alienated from your own life.
Okay, so if staying in this cycle literally destroys our physiological and psychological identity, what does the alternative actually look like? Because defining true authenticity sounds lovely, on a vision board or an Instagram graphic, but as we've established, it is neurologically terrifying in practice.
It goes against all our wiring.
Right, so the sources frame this as a fundamental shift in values, choosing honesty over approval and peace over performance.
That phrase, peace over performance, it requires a radical restructuring of your internal locus of control.
Walk me through that locus of control.
Sure. So currently, the people pleaser's locus of control is entirely external. Their subconscious mantra is, my value is determined by how comfortable I make the people in this room.
Okay.
Authenticity requires moving that locus inward. Changing the mantra to, my value is determined by my alignment with my own internal integrity, regardless of how the room reacts.
Regardless of how the room reacts. That is a massive shift. I keep thinking about the performance aspect of this. Like, imagine an actor starring in a massively successful Broadway play.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So the audience adores them. The critics are raving. They are getting nonstop applause every single night, which is the ultimate quick approval, right? But then a psychotic director tells them the play actually runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, no.
And they are never allowed to leave the stage or take off the costume. They literally have to sleep in the corset and the heavy stage makeup.
That's a...
They're going to lose their mind from exhaustion. The applause isn't worth it anymore. True peace in that scenario isn't getting louder applause. True peace is the quiet of the dressing room, wiping the heavy makeup off and putting on sweatpants.
Putting on the sweatpants.
Ah.
I love that. And the dressing room, in this analogy, is where you set your boundaries.
Yes.
But the transition from the stage to the dressing room is where people really falter. The sources note that the absolute key to authenticity is setting healthy boundaries without feeling guilty.
Which is the hardest part. Like, setting boundaries without feeling guilty sounds like an actual superpower. How is that actually possible? Why does setting a completely reasonable boundary like, I don't know, telling a friend you can't help them move on your only day off, why does that feel like you just committed a moral crime?
It feels awful.
It does. Why is the guilt so physically overwhelming?
To understand the guilt, we really have to look at how we've encoded our moral frameworks over our lifetime. For a chronic people pleaser, guilt is essentially a misfiring alarm system.
Misfiring how?
Well, normally, guilt is a healthy emotion. It signals that we have violated a core moral code, like if we steal something, or we intentionally hurt someone physically.
Right, you feel bad because you did something bad.
Exactly. But for the chronic conformist, the moral code itself has been corrupted. The code they operate under dictates that their primary responsibility on Earth is the emotional regulation of others.
Wow. Okay, let me just pause on that. The emotional regulation of others is their primary responsibility.
Yes. So when you set a boundary, your brain interprets it as a complete failure of your primary duty.
So your brain thinks you're doing something objectively evil.
Exactly. You feel guilty because you deeply believe you are supposed to make everyone happy. It's your job. The mechanism for neutralizing that guilt, according to the sources, is the radical acceptance of a very hard truth. You cannot make everyone happy.
It's impossible.
It is a biological and physical impossibility. And attempting to do so is a fool's errand.
Yeah.
You have to intellectually overwrite that corrupted code. You have to recognize that someone else's disappointment is not equivalent to your moral failure.
Okay, someone else's disappointment is not your moral failure. That is powerful. Let's take this theoretical framework and subject it to a stress test because I love seeing how this plays out in real life. Let's look at authenticity in the wild, using the specific high-stakes arenas outlined in the sources.
Let's do it.
I want to look at the workplace first, because this is where the fear of rejection is intrinsically tied to literal financial survival. You aren't just risking a frown, you are risking your livelihood.
The workplace is absolutely the ultimate pressure cooker for this dynamic because the hierarchy naturally demands a certain level of compliance. You have a boss. You have deliverables.
Right. So picture this. You are already operating at 110% capacity. You are missing dinners with your family. And a senior partner or a manager comes to your desk at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, the classic nightmare scenario, and asks you to take on a massive new weekend project.
We've all been there.
For a people pleaser, the submarine sonar pings instantly. The threat of being labeled not a team player flashes in bright red, and the word yes just falls out of their mouth before they even take a breath. It's totally automatic. So how does authenticity intervene in that split second?
Authenticity intervenes by interrupting that automatic reflex. The sources emphasize that in the workplace, authenticity means acknowledging your actual capacity and saying no when you are genuinely overwhelmed.
But how do you do that without getting fired?
Right, that addresses the fear of financial ruin you just mentioned. The critical component here is the methodology. The text highlights expressing your honest opinion respectfully.
Respectfully, it's about building a respectful bridge. Like you don't have to flip your desk over and scream about being overworked to be authentic.
Right. Authenticity does not equate to hostility. That's a huge misconception. You can utilize nonviolent communication frameworks. You can look at your boss and say, I really want to ensure this project gets the attention it deserves. Given my current workload with client X, I simply do not have the bandwidth to execute this to our standard by Monday. Can we deprioritize the other project, or should we look at bringing someone else in?
Oh, that's good. That's very good.
Right. You have stated your boundary clearly, you have protected your energy, and you have remained entirely professional. You offered solutions.
You essentially removed the emotional performance, the sort of groveling or apologizing, and you just presented the operational reality.
Yes. And this exact same principle scales up to the macro level of your life path, too. The sources point out that choosing a career you truly enjoy, instead of the one that fulfills your parents' or society's expectations, is the ultimate exercise in this kind of boundary setting.
I see this constantly with people who spend a decade becoming a lawyer or a doctor solely because their family expected it.
The sunk cost fallacy there is immense.
Immense. To walk away from that is to face an absolute avalanche of tribal disapproval.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it is the same dynamic in our personal lives. The sources explicitly mention the courage required to end unhealthy relationships.
Yeah, that was a big section.
Because when you have played the role of the infinite accommodator in a friendship or even a marriage for years ending, it means deciding that your own psychological survival is finally more important than keeping the peace. It is the moment you stop playing the character.
But, and this is a big butt-dropping character, has immediate tangible consequences. And this is where the sources get incredibly dark, but also incredibly real.
Very real.
If you are listening to this right now and thinking about finally setting boundaries tomorrow, we have to talk about the social fallout. The text presents a brutal mathematical reality, it says. Not everyone will understand your choices, and not everyone will stay.
That's the hard truth.
It is. If you change the rules of the game, some players are going to get up and leave the table. Why is it that when we start acting healthier, people get so angry?
Well, it comes down to systems theory, ultimately.
Systems theory.
Yeah. Families, workplaces, and friend groups, they all operate as closed systems that seek homeostasis, a state of balance.
Okay, so the group wants to stay balanced.
Exactly. Even if the balance is inherently toxic, it is predictable. And human systems love predictability. So if your designated role in the system is to be the shock absorber, the person who always says yes, who never complains, who absorbs everyone else's stress, the system actually relies on you to function.
Wow. So they need you to be the shock absorber.
They do. So when you suddenly say, I am no longer absorbing this, the system is thrown into complete chaos.
Oh, I see. So when people get angry at your new boundaries, they aren't necessarily angry at you.
Exactly. They are angry that the system requires recalibration.
Huh?
They are angry because your new boundary now requires them to manage their own discomfort, which you used to do for them.
You have essentially stopped providing them with a highly specific service.
Yes.
Friction-free interaction. If a store stops selling your favorite product, you get mad and you stop going to that store.
That's a brutal way to look at relationships, but it's often accurate for these unbalanced ones.
But the sources reframe this loss, which I appreciate. They say this fallout isn't a tragedy, it's actually a filtration system.
It is an incredibly efficient, albeit very painful, filtration system.
Yeah.
Think of the cause and effect relationship at play here. When your actions finally align with your internal values, your self-respect naturally generates a totally different energy. This authenticity acts as both a magnet and a repellent.
It repels the people who were only interacting with your mask.
Yes, the people who only valued you for your lack of boundaries.
They will self-select out of your life.
They will. They'll say you've changed, and they'll leave.
Yeah.
And while that triggers our primal fear of abandonment in the short term, that anterior cingulate cortex is going to light up in the long term, it makes room for what the sources call the right people.
The right people.
Because when you are brave enough to present your inconvenient edges, the people who stay are the ones who actually respect the real architecture of your identity.
So the relationships become fundamentally stronger because they are finally anchored in reality, not performance.
Exactly. They love you, not the character you play.
And this leads to what the text identifies as the ultimate yield of this whole painful process, which is inner peace. There is a contrasting dynamic presented in the sources that I just find absolutely profound. It states, pleasing others means you are accepted for a moment, but being true to yourself means you are free for a lifetime.
Accepted for a moment or free for a lifetime. That perfectly encapsulates the transition from the quick fix to the long-term yield. The inner peace they are describing here, it isn't just a state of mind. It is a measurable physiological state.
Like your body actually calms down.
Exactly. When you no longer have to run those two operating systems in your brain, your cortisol levels drop, your allostatic load lightens. You are no longer bracing for impact every time someone walks into the room.
The Broadway actor gets to stay in the dressing room. Sweatpants on.
Sweatpants firmly on.
Okay, so if we want that freedom, how do we begin the extraction process today? Because the sources provide a highly practical listener's playbook for this. And it all hinges on the first step, which sounds deceptively simple, but I think it is probably the most difficult maneuver in human communication.
Oh, it absolutely is.
And that step is pause before automatically saying yes.
The tactical pause. It is the most powerful tool in the arsenal.
I really want to break this down to a granular level, because the challenge here is just to introduce a 3-second gap between the stimulus, someone asking you for something, and your response. Why is a mere 3 seconds so wildly effective at dismantling a lifelong habit of people-pleasing?
Well, it has to do with the speed of our neural pathways.
Okay, break that down for me.
When you are asked to do something, your fear-based people-pleasing reflex kicks in instantly. That reflex is driven by the amygdala, which is the primitive part of your brain. It is an automatic, autonomic nervous system response designed to secure immediate safety.
Survival mode.
Survival mode. So the yes is loaded in the chamber before you even consciously process the request.
The submarine sonar detects a threat, and it automatically deploys countermeasures.
Exactly. You say yes before you even know what you're agreeing to. But the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, long-term planning, and evaluating your actual core values, that part operates just a fraction of a second slower than the amygdala.
It's literally just a timing issue.
It is a timing issue. So by enforcing a strict 3-second pause, you violently disrupt the automatic reflex. You are essentially buying time for your prefrontal cortex to come online and assess the situation logically.
I love that. You are giving the adult in the room time to take the microphone away from the panic child.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it, yes.
And in those 3 seconds, the sources tell us exactly what the prefrontal cortex should be asking. The question is, what do I truly want?
Right. You use that pause to run a very quick internal diagnostic. Do I have the energy for this? Does this align with my priorities today? Am I saying yes out of genuine desire or purely out of fear?
And once you have that answer, the next step in the playbook is to practice expressing that truth honestly and kindly.
Which brings us back to the respectful bridge we talked about earlier.
Right, the nonviolent communication. But inevitably, even if you are incredibly kind, someone is going to be displeased. You will say no to the extra project, or you will decline the birthday invitation, and the other person will frown. They might express disappointment.
They probably will.
So the sources say the countermeasure to this is to radically accept that disagreement is a normal part of life.
This is where we disarm the fear of criticism completely. The chronic people pleaser views any disagreement as a catastrophic failure of the relationship.
Like, if we disagree, it's over.
Right. But if you observe healthy systems, whether we're talking about in nature, in business, or in healthy marriages, friction is not a sign of failure. Friction is just a byproduct of two distinct entities interacting.
Right. Like, when two tectonic plates meet, there is friction. It's just geology. It's normal. It doesn't mean the Earth is broken.
Exactly. Accepting disagreement as a normal, non-lethal part of life fundamentally removes the terror of the anterior cingulate cortex lighting up. When you realize that two people can respectfully disagree, or that someone could be temporarily disappointed in you, and you literally do not die, the fear loses its grip.
You survived the ping.
You survive the ping. And that survival allows you to achieve the final, most crucial step of the playbook, which is to stop measuring your foundational worth by other people's fluctuating opinions.
Because their opinions are going to fluctuate no matter what you do.
Always. Your worth is no longer determined by how smoothly you can bend to accommodate the room. Your worth is anchored in your alignment with your own integrity.
Man, we have covered immense ground today. We started by examining the evolutionary hardware that traps us in this quick fix cycle, how our primal fear of rejection keeps us constantly performing for those tiny dopamine hits of approval.
The sugar rush.
The sugar rush. We unpacked the profound hidden tax of that performance, how the cognitive dissonance of suppressing our inconvenient edges leads to somatic exhaustion, and ultimately the complete erosion of our identity.
Losing the person in the mirror.
Yeah. But we also outlined the architecture of the escape route. We saw that defining true authenticity requires the courage to move our locus of control inward. It means choosing peace over performance, setting boundaries without the corrupted programming of guilt, and building respectful bridges even when the stakes are high, like at work.
And we face the harsh reality of the filtration system, acknowledging that while the social fallout of changing the rules will cause some people to leave your life, it is the exact mechanism required to attract the relationships that will actually honor your true architecture.
The temporary pain of disappointing others is the purchase price for a lifetime of cognitive freedom.
It's the cost of admission.
It is, and it all begins with the tactical disruption of the 3-second pause. Giving your higher brain the space to step in, ask what you actually want, and survive the friction of a normal human disagreement. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, highly practical thought to mull over today.
I love this part.
Based on the mechanics we've unpacked, I want you to run a quick mental simulation. If you successfully stopped pleasing others today, if you completely removed the cognitive load of that performance and finally took off the mask, what is the very first thing about your daily routine that would immediately have to change?
That brings all the theory right down to the ground floor of their reality.
It really does. Think about it. What is the very first obligation, the very first interaction, or the very first habit that simply drops off your calendar?
It's a powerful question.
Thank you for bringing these incredible, complex sources to the table today. It has been a genuinely fascinating exploration of human behavior. Remember, the right people will always respect the real you. May you have the courage to endure the friction, the wisdom to protect your energy, and the profound peace that comes from finally being completely yourself. Keep exploring and keep diving deep.